Since 2015, the Liberals have pursued a systemic agenda of dismantling Canada's judicial system and undermining the rule of law in this country. They have not only done so with their repeated ethics violations and their blatant disrespect for the Charter, but they have done so through more legitimate means, like through the acts in this Parliament. And it's thanks to Liberal bills that passed under former Justice Minister, committing crimes has become easier and more common than before. It seems that under this one, that streak will continue, given the responses we've heard in this House already, and some colorful language, of course. At every step of the way, they have placed the rights of offenders over the rights of victims and their woke, out-of-touch ideology over common sense and safety. In deterring crimes, the Liberals' Bill C-5 eliminates the mandatory minimum sentences for dangerous crimes such as robbery with a firearm, sexual assault, drug trafficking. There are others. And not only that, but it allows hardened criminals to serve their reduced sentences in the comfort of their own home, to serve while watching TV in their living room, sleeping in their own beds, and enjoying the privileges that so many who haven't committed crimes, everybody who hasn't committed crimes, enjoys. And arresting criminals, the catch and release practices now mean that it's nearly impossible to keep dangerous offenders in jail for more than a few hours. They are then released back into the world, free to commit crimes, sometimes even the same crimes, even on the same day, over and over again. The revolving door spins, cycling through a rotation of hardened, merciless lawbreakers who face no accountability. They are free to break the law over and over again, putting the public at risk and propagating the unnecessary harm onto communities, onto innocent victims, onto families, onto neighborhoods. And finally, in prosecuting criminals, after 8 years of this Liberal NDP incompetence, they have decayed our justice system and made it just a shell of its former self. It takes months to get a court date. Resources have been stretched to the limit, which makes it harder to catch criminals, and it's harder to keep them accountable. So it's no surprise that our streets are more dangerous, and the Canadians are worried that their once safe neighborhoods are now just subjects of crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. Every single day, we see new outrageous headlines about an individual who are putting communities in danger and about a system that is failing Canadians. Just last week, a 43-year-old man stabbed a total stranger with a syringe in broad daylight in downtown Toronto. This man was out on bail for previous assaults and had more than 40 convictions in his lifetime, including failure to comply with the court and failing to attend court dates. This is the middle of the day in Toronto. But thanks to these Liberal policies, we know that he'll just get bail one more time and that the cycle will continue again and again. Stories like these add up. That's what makes Canadians feel unsafe. It's not just an empirical, feeling. It's based on data and evidence. They don't just add up to broken communities, broken victims, broken families. They tell a story about the state of our country. And since 2015, gang crimes have doubled. Violent crime is up 37%. Canada's murder rate is the highest that it's ever been in 30 years since the last time we had a Liberal government in power. And nowhere is the story more out of control and more apparent than when it comes to auto theft. Too many people will wake up and they'll look out the window and they'll see the car that was sitting there in their driveway the night before is no longer there. Gone while they were sleeping, gone for their communities, gone from safe communities like mine where at one time nobody locked their front door. But since 2015, car thefts have tripled here in Canada. More than 100,000 vehicles are being stolen every year, including nearly 10,000 in Toronto alone. That means that every 6 minutes in Canada, a car is stolen. Every 6 minutes, gangs and criminals profit from the criminal activity and use it to finance even more criminal activities, like more car thefts, arms trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking. Don't listen to me. The Prime Minister actually admitted it in his own press release. It costs every Canadian who drives almost everywhere more to pay for this. It cost the insurance industry $1 billion in 2022. Everyone in the province is now paying more to drive. In Ontario, car theft claims just in the beginning of last year were up 329%. Wow. That's the first half of the year. That accounts for $700 million in losses. That means $130 more for every Ontario driver on insurance. So why is this happening? Well, let's lead us back to the dangerous catch and release policies that unleashed crime and chaos in communities. Bill C-75, it allows repeat violent offenders to be released on bail within hours of arrest, who then often go and reoffend. Last year, even Mayor Stephen Del Duca, he's my mayor in Vaughan, he's probably a familiar name to many on the other side, the mayor of Vaughan wrote the Prime Minister, calling on the federal government to urgently modernize Canada's bail system to ensure that dangerous offenders are kept off our streets for committing crimes ranging from gun violence to home break-ins to auto thefts. The mayor wrote then Canada's public safety minister at the time asking about auto thefts specifically, asking that CBSA protocols are tightened for screening, for inspection, for exports leaving our country. It fell on deaf ears. There was nothing from the government's member of parliament who represents a riding in Vaughan until just last week. That letter was written in January, after the problem got so out of control that the council had to step in, demanding action for something that they've been asking for. After offenders have been convicted, don't let it stop at Bill C-75. Bill C-5 gives those convicts house arrest, even those with long, storied histories of stealing multiple cars. This means that they can just walk out of their front door, be on their streets again, and start stealing cars and terrorizing neighborhoods when they are doing whatever they are doing in the comforts of their own home. And one last thing, the federal government is, of course, in control of our ports. That means the places where organized crime is taking place, en route to federal ports, at federal ports, and of course, stolen cars waiting at federal ports to be shipped overseas. It is time for a new approach. It's time to start increasing mandatory jail time to deter the actual crime and not to have people keep doing it over and over again. 3 years for 3 thefts. And of course, ending the house arrests for car thieves, while also increasing sentences for gang-associated car thieves. Police, insurance association, community groups, and business organizations have been sounding the alarm bell about this for years. Our own constituents send us videos of this happening right in their front driveway, but their concerns have fallen on deaf ears of the Liberal government. And in the meantime, they still continue to stand with lawbreakers instead of law enforcement. Now, the calls have reached a breaking point. They're finally going to do something about it. But what is that something? Are they going to increase the punishments? No. Are they going to end catch and release policies? No. Turn repeat violent offenders back in the streets? Are they going to crack down on the incompetence at Canadian ports that allow thousands of cars? Nope. They are going to have a summit. They're going to sit around the table, they're going to have a meeting, they're going to come out with a press release, they're going to take some photos, they're going to talk about it after 8 years where this problem has gotten out of control. They had a summit on food prices, Mr. Speaker. Food prices went up. They had a summit on housing. Housing prices have doubled. I can hardly wait to see the results for this summer. In fact, I think Canadians would beg them not to have a summit. That's right. Instead, start cracking down on the violent offenders, keep them behind bars when they recommit, stop the house arrests, and actually get serious about fighting crime in every single neighborhood across the country. Here, here, here.
Questions and comments? Question and commentaire. The honourable member for Don Valley East.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for her comments. The member started off her speech by talking about woke policies. Used the word woke. I've always been a person that's invested into preventative measures, like acknowledging things like systemic racism, acknowledging that we need to invest into communities where there may be some disaggregated race-based data that would contribute to making those decisions. So I'd like to ask the member opposite, does she acknowledge that systemic racism is real in this country, and should we be making investments based on data collection?
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the crime rate in this country has gone up by 32% violent crime. Gang-related crime has gone up by over 90% in this country. There needs to be something done about it. That's exactly what we're talking about right here. We're talking about the solutions that we're going to put in place to keep repeat violent offenders behind jail. So he can talk about whatever he wants. But this motion today is about keeping our cars in our driveway and putting the bad guys in jail. I don't know why that's such a novel concept in this country anymore.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, to be able to apply sentences, enforce them, well, perhaps you could enforce more severe sentences. Well, to be able to do so, you have to be able to dismantle and catch people who are committing these crimes. Can the member recognize that the Conservative government, with its cuts to CBSA and to the RCMP and the ports, made a mistake that had an influence on what's happening today? The honourable member for Thornhill.
This is a constant refrain that has been coming up in this House. The Conservatives actually spent less money, and the rate of crime was lower than it is today. We have had a 300% increase in car theft in Toronto since they took power. And yes, we probably did spend less money as a Conservative government, but you know what's worse than failure, Mr. Speaker? It's expensive failure, and that's exactly what we see from this government.
Questions and comments. The honourable member Courtney Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague didn't answer the question. The Conservatives, when they were in government, cut $600 million to the RCMP. They got rid of the RCMP recruitment fund. They cut over 1,100 jobs at the CBSA that we're still feeling today, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, we brought forward amendments, the NDP today, common sense proposals. You'd think that the Conservatives would support, including getting CEOs to make sure that car manufacturers change the way they're designing vehicles to make them harder to steal, Mr. Speaker, but they didn't do that. Also, we heard testimony from the Canadian Association of Police Chiefs, but again, the Conservatives failed to listen to the experts, the Law and Order Party. And Mr. Speaker, the worst provinces for car theft are in Conservative-governed provinces. So maybe my colleague can explain all of why that's happening in Conservative-led provinces, why they cut so seriously and so deeply on the RCMP and the CBSA, and do they regret those cuts?
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, he does have one thing right. We are the tough-on-crime party. We're the only tough-on-crime party in this entire House. And the truth is I'm not the one that needs to explain to my constituents why I'm propping up a government at every single opportunity and every single confidence motion that has let the rate of crime rise in this country to 32% higher on violent crime, to 100% higher on gang-related crime, and to 300% higher on auto thefts. Hundreds of thousands of cars are being stolen in this country, and the member opposite, or the member who just asked me the question, is supporting a meeting and supporting tougher measures by car companies, placing the blame on car companies instead of the government that he supports at every single measure, no matter how hard they've failed in this country.
Questions and comments. Question commentaire. The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Relations or Indigenous Services. Very short.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was listening to the debate from the lobby, and I heard the member start by talking about woke policy. And I wondered what she thought about when she used that word. If woke to her means caring for vulnerable people, advocating for the rights of the LGBTQ communities, working on reconciliation, making sure that people have a fair chance to succeed, that young people don't find themselves in a life of crime or worse. And so I'd just like to know what she means when she talks about woke.
The honourable member for Thornhill, we're out of time, and they'll allow the honourable member to answer.
Mr. Speaker, we're talking about repeat offenders doing the same thing over and over again. What is woke is allowing this to continue to happen in this country with absolutely no recourse and no punishment and no jail time. And I don't think Canadians will stand for it.